If someone would have asked me what my favorite genres in gaming would be, I will definitely say platformers first. Moving through obstacles, jumping on enemies and collecting items and so on. I mean, Mario 64, that was the first game I ever played in my life. But if you had asked me what my second favorite genre, I would definitely say it was horror. Horror, as ironic as it sounds, it is somewhat of a comforting genre for me. Several of my favorite media is actually horror related, but I do really think it shines the most when it comes to video games. There's still so many horror games I want to play and they probably will be in my backlog for a very long time. However, there was one horror game ever since I saw it, I just want to play it so badly. A sci-fi horror game called Signalis. Signalis made me instantly grabbed by its character designs and visuals. I mean, this game looked fucking dope. Playing Signalis, I had some certain hope for it. I was expecting a solid experience. But what I experienced was one of the best games I've ever played in my life. And in this video, I'm gonna explain exactly why I think so. So without any more time wasted, let's get into it. Upon starting the game, we're greeted with this logo Signalis, with this very ominous alarm sound. Clicking on the screen takes us to the options menu with a big eye staring at the player. I really love this menu, dude. It is so cool looking, and the way the eye follows the mouse cursor is such an awesome detail. With nowhere else to go, let's start a new adventure. The game opens up with a close-up of the main character named Elster waking up in a chamber. Probably been there for a few days in hibernation. But when you walk out of the room, you start to notice it's very quiet in the area. Too quiet. There is no one else to see. Walking to this door, we find a red book on top of this box. In the book, or manual as I should say, it's about some Penrose type vessels. The vessels that are meant for space travel to other places to scout for natural resources. And in these ships, there are usually two gestalts or people in them. Walking around for a bit, we can finally find the cockpit of this ship. So this whole time we have been on the ship, but it's been crashed. Even looking around, you will see the main character say how the ship will never function again. We're not sure why it crashed, but we can assume it can't be good. We don't even know how long we've been in the chamber or how long it's been since the ship crashed. In the cockpit as well, we also find a picture of a white-haired girl. However, half this picture has been damaged, so we can only see her in it. Considering this picture hung up on the cockpit, this must be someone else who knows. It could have been possibly the second person who was on the ship, considering that in the manual, it said that all Penrose ships had two people in them. But that asks the question, where is she now? Where is this person now? Walking around the ship some more and doing a puzzle, we find a chamber and open it up. I expected a person, but it was actually empty. Instead, it was just a keycard in there. With the keycard, we can finally get out of the ship and explore the outside. Walking for a bit in the snow, we come to a hole with some stairs down, with a hole at the bottom that it does not look very welcoming, to say the least. But I'm sure it'll be fine, it's probably fine. I mean, if Silent Hill 4 teach us, we can just go into holes and it will be completely fine sometimes. At the end of the hall, we are in an office. At the table lies a book, and picking up, we start to send a message to someone. Maybe the organization that ordered the first ship to make them drop another one. But something about this message feels off, and as the cutscene goes on, it gets more unsettling. After the very cool intro, Elster is in the bathroom looking at the mirror like she's James Sunderland. Right after, you're in an underground facility, but just like the ship, it's so silent with no one to see. Like, what's going on? Where is everyone? We do eventually walk in the room and find people, but they are dead. This one especially just looks like someone smashed their head in. Who could have done something like this? Or even big question, what could have done this? But walking around for a bit, we finally see another person named Star, but sadly, she is badly bleeding. She warns us not to go any further and just to go back where we came from. Elsa shows her a photo of the girl she's trying to find, but the Star has no clue who she is, though she suggests she's probably likely in the hole that leads to the mine. And to get there, we need a special keycard. If we talk to her again right after she says that, she will then talk about how she has a repair torch that will heal her wounds, and when they stop bleeding, she will then start to leave the area. So most likely, she actually survived and just left the facility. In the same room, we also find a protector keycard. Now, which door is it for? I don't know. Let me just walk around for 20 minutes finding it out. If it is one thing you're going to be seeing a lot in this game, it's keycards. There is a lot of them, and like half the doors require them. Thankfully, they have managed to make this not annoying. First, the keycard says which door or area it goes to, and second, you have a map that shows the areas. What's also very cool is that on the map, you see these colored rectangular symbols, which are the doors. The blue ones are the ones you can go through, red can't be accessed, and yellow means it can be opened, but it either needs a keycard or some other means to open. This made it so much easier to find out where I needed to go. Later on, there is this one area that does not display the map, and trust me, it made me spend some extra time finding the doors. A lot of extra time. Walking around again, we're doing some more puzzles. We find another survivor named Isa. I also just want to quickly mention that before going into her room, the room before with those dead corpses, one of them started walking and it scared the absolute shit out of me, despite me knowing this would have happened. But anyways, back to Isa. Isa, just like Star, is telling you to go back and not to go any further. She doesn't know what's happened here, only that it is not safe. Despite not telling you why she's here, we can find a note on the desk saying, Erica, if you find this note, despite everything that's happened, I come to look for you. So just like us, Isa is probably looking for someone. There's probably this Erica person. On the school floor, we are met with our first enemy of the game. These are the most common enemies. They will have a knife and walk towards you slowly and try to stab you, just like if you were in London.
Birmingham is a fucking shithole! I hate the fucking place! I fucking hate it!
These enemies look also very familiar to a human, almost like they turned into a zombie. Something horribly has been going on and happening to the facility. Some form of plague has been affecting the workers here, turning them into these monsters. But hopefully the person we are looking for is still safe. In this area back here, we also get our first weapon of the game, the pistol. It's a decent weapon. On the knife enemies, it takes a couple of hits to kill them, but it takes less hits to kill them if you shoot them unnoticed. There's also this one bathroom stall door that won't open. The other two can be opened and contains items, but the third one is just completely locked. Elster even comments on it saying the stall is locked. Is someone inside? I guess we will never know. Or will we? Now with the keycard we can finally progress, but Star is gone. Only her blood is left of her. But on the same spot there's also a repair patch. The repair patches heals a small amount, maybe about 15-20% of your health. You do get some healing items that can heal more later on, but for now we gotta stick with the patches. Now you have seen the footage of this game, or I hope you did. Unless you have it on a second monitor while doing something else on the main, which is, fair enough, I do that too. But this game takes heavy inspiration from the Resident Evil series. Now most of the game is in a top-down perspective, which sometimes you will enter first-person mode, looking around some rooms or items like Resident Evil again. You even got the profile picture and the heart monitor on the side, which brought such a good smile to my face. Now I do love the sound effects in this game, but I do think the saving sound it actually kind of scared me first time. I thought at least it just died. I just went to the TV just to save and just fucking died. I was like, well, that was it. Something interesting happened during this area. I saw this box with a butterfly symbol on it and opened it with a special key. Inside the box is a black stone with a red ingran on it. Picking it up, we're suddenly transported into a snowy storm with a bridge in front of us. Not sure how we managed to get here, but I guess the storm teleported us? And walking over to the bridge, we found a small building. It definitely seemed like someone who had been living here before. We can even find a note on the table. Dear Iris, I hope you and Ariana are both well. I have spoken to the officials at Aeon, and they agreed that it would be best for Ariana to attend school in Sector C. I have a spare room she can stay in until she graduates. I know you two are inseparable, but we both know that it is best for your daughter if she receives a normal education in the city. Love, your sister Camilla. Whoever Iris and Ariana are, we know at least they are related. This facility was not only a place for work, but also a place to live and go to school. A place where students could graduate. On the kitchen table, there's also a radio model you can pick up. With this, Elsa can achieve radio transmission frequencies. This is used for a lot of puzzles in the game. How this works is by going to the menu, you can change the frequencies from 50 Hz to 250. Usually the puzzles will display the number in some way or form, like this door outside the small building. Below it says 160, so that's the frequency you need to play it at. You can turn on the radio at any time, but at times it's best to not turn it on at all, considering that enemies in the same room will hear you instantly if you turn it on. Now it's unclear what the infection is or how it came to happen, but reading several notes down there, we can see that it most likely came from the mines. At first they didn't think it was a big deal because the symptoms they didn't seem too bad, headache, coughing and so on, but people who were infected will lose a lot of their skin and lose the ability to talk and then die. Those who died by the infection would come back to life, however, just a few hours after death. But again, the question is, what caused this infection to happen? We only heard that it's most likely from the mines, but maybe this could be a Resident Evil scenario where someone created the virus and made it spread. Who knows? At the hospital floor, we can also find our second weapon in the game, the shotgun. The shotgun will deal a much larger amount of damage compared to the pistol, being able to one-hit enemies being aimed properly. But the ammo for the shotgun is scarce, so it's best to spare it just for a situation where you really need it. While in Hospital Wing 3 and entering this room with a TV, we can use a cassette we found in another area. The cutscene does remind me when we went to the radio house over the bridge, entering this first person mode and exploring an environment that's not in the facility, like we got teleported somewhere else. Both of these instances have been happening due to Elsa having picked up an item of some kind, but this cutscene also makes me confused. How do we get there by interacting with a tape? Was it an old recording? And the biggest one is, who is the white-haired girl on the train? Now, after doing several puzzles, you come to this one room with a lot of ammo and health and the save station, meaning that something is coming. And in the middle of the room is a hole we can jump down to.
Oh, hell no!
This is the first boss fight in the game and it's actually really cool. And this is the first time I actually got a death in the game. But not because I was bad, but just because I kind of forgot to pick up more weapons. I just had a shotgun with 5 bullets and not the gun, so I kind of had to restart the game. So instead of doing that, I just want to die just to see how it was. And you know, it was kind of terrifying. Getting back to the second time with the gun, the fight is not hard. Avoid the bullets and when they get stunned to open the helmet to shoot them in the head to do damage. She also tried to spawn an enemy, but that did not last long. Defeating the boss, we are greeted by another person that actually happens to be a male by the name of Adler. Talking to him, we mentioned that we are looking for a girl and he does seem to recognize her, saying she was one of the workers of the mines. But right after, he pushes Esther down the elevator and says she's never should have returned. And what we learn, people, never trust a man, especially a white one. Never trust them. They're just bad news. Right after being pushed down by Adler, we are suddenly seeing another scene of a schoolgirl late at night in her school. This girl does look a lot like Isa, which would mean this could be a memory from her past. Walking out of the classroom and in the hall, Isa finds a girl getting beat up by other students. We again find a white-haired girl in Isa's memories. This could likely be the same girl that was on the train, but like I said earlier, if this is true, then who is she and why are we getting these flashbacks of her? Esther luckily survives landing on top of these dead bodies, but if you notice, it's the same unit as her. And even down below there is even more of them. These, however, don't seem to have died because of the infection, but rather different causes. But what could have happened? I guess you have to stick around to find out. Please stick around, I'm gonna explain later. And in this area there's also another weapon we can get, but this one is actually pretty hidden. Going down to the 7th floor and into this room far into the back, we find a hunter's key. By finding the gun case as well, you can use the key to open it and get the revolver. The revolver is actually a pretty great weapon. It's definitely the weapon I use the most in this game. It does good damage, being able to even one-shot enemies at times. The ammo is also surprisingly more common than I expected, so it kind of became the main weapon I used the most in the game. I mentioned puzzles in this game several times, and that's because there's a lot of them. Now, I love puzzles. I love the feeling of solving a hard puzzle all by myself. It makes me feel smart for a few seconds until there's a next puzzle where I can't solve it and I realize that I'm just dumb again. Now, a good puzzle in my eyes is when you have every tool in front of you to solve the puzzle and it makes you feel satisfied finding it out. What I mean is that a good puzzle will leave you feeling not only good about yourself, but it will also be quite a challenge. A great example of a good puzzle is in Silent Hill 1 with the piano puzzle. It's super clever and took me a long time to figure out, but when I did, I felt like a fucking genius. But a bad puzzle is one where it's just poorly constructed and lacks challenge. Thankfully, Signalis has a lot of really cool puzzles, and some that had me scratching my head, but when finding out, I did feel big-brained. I don't think there's any puzzle in this game that's bad, but I do want to say I don't think any of the puzzles matches the cleverness or genius of like Silent Hill games. But again, none of them are bad, and at worst, they're just meh, but at best they're actually really good. But I have to admit that some of the puzzles, they made me have to look up a guide. Like this one with the fire where you have to line up with the other line using the 3 buttons below, and yeah, you could say I was quite struggling, probably spent like 20 minutes until I looked up the video about it.
Why isn't this working?
Jumping down this hole, we get another cutscene of Isa and Adler. Isa tries to get into this room, but as Adler says, she can't answer right now. But we're walking towards her, the scene cuts out and we get text on the screen saying, "None of us are here by choice." Now, I know this might sound crazy, but I don't think Adler actually want to help Isa.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Now, combat in survival horror is nothing new. From early years of horror games, you usually had some form of defense you could use if you came into contact with enemies, though in different ways. Clock Tower, for example, while it didn't have weapons, you could still push Sysman away and run away from him. I feel like though, since Amnesia dropped, there's been a lot of horror games that have this hide and seek gameplay. To them, where you can defend yourself and only hide. For me, I'm usually not a big fan of this gameplay style. It's very simple and makes them kind of hard to replay games for me. I mean, hell, my favorite horror games have some form of combat in them. The combat is simple but also very solid. You unlock more weapons throughout the game. I do think that all do a pretty good job of being useful and feeling impactful, and also being generally fun to use. But what's also really cool about the combat is that by using any weapons and aiming at an enemy, this little square that shows up on them will start to shrink, meaning your chance of hitting them will increase and also do more damage. You could either shoot the enemy as fast as you can or take it slowly to make sure all your hits will land. You also got the melee weapons that are only one-time use items. They will kill or at least knock enemies instantly down in one hit, but you have to be also very close to hit them with it, which can lead to you taking extra damage. But it's also important that when the enemy is on the ground shaking, you have to stomp on them, otherwise they will get right back up after like 20 seconds. There are also times when an enemy, despite having stomped and killed them, they can go back up, but usually that takes like some time before they do that. So it's several times best to just ignore them and not to waste any more ammo. You can also sneak past enemies and hide in the shadows. If you walk behind any enemy, they won't notice you unless you make too much noise. This is a pretty good strategy for several enemies, especially like in like big like rooms. It's better just like ignore them, but for small rooms, I always just like killing them because then I don't want to think about them. You also have your health items that come in different forms. We have the repair patches that heals a small amount, repair sprays heals a large amount of health, and then we have the auto injectors which heals the biggest amount. point, but is that you can equip one and save Elster from fatal damage, so it can be extremely useful. Being very Resident Evil-esque, you of course have a limited inventory, about 6 slots in them. So with this it means you have to leave certain items behind, but it's always a good idea to have at least one weapon on you at all times. One good thing too though is that in each save area there is a red box you can put your items in, and no matter which save area you're in, the items will be there. And thank God for this, because this makes it so much better. The visuals in this game are phenomenal. I love it so much. I really love the use of the PS1 aesthetic in this. It looks amazing. Honestly, the character models in this game remind me a lot of the Silent Hill 1 character models. Silent Hill characters will barely have any faces or mouths due to the limitation of the hardware, and Signalis does have a lot less jittery animation due to again not being a PS1 game. But unlike Silent Hill, this game don't got voice acting. Both the animations and sprites looks amazing as hell. In several cutscenes as well, you also get text on screen like you're watching an episode of Monogatari.
ちゃんと荒木くんの声色を使うから大丈夫よ。任せておいて。私の声を担当している声優さんは優秀なの。
But it's used very effectively here. It's usually pretty unnerving. Only problem is that sometimes it can flash too fast, so you won't always be able to read it in time. So getting back to the story, we actually find more notes of the facility and the people that were working here, finding more information about these different units and the tasks in the facility. There are several units like workers, nurses and more, but the two most important units in the facility were the FKLR or Falke and ADLR or Adler. The Adler unit is the one who oversees and manages all the other units doing the task and control of the facility as well. Other units are very interesting too, being best working alone and not with anyone else, especially with other Adler units. But the Adler unit is designed to be dependent on one certain unit, which is the Falke unit, especially from the emotional standpoint. Falke units are the commander of the facility, the highest ranking unit in the facility. Interesting enough, Falke units are the only type of units who doesn't have a weakness described in their database. I assume it's probably classified so that others can't have the information, considering that they are the super units in the army. At some point, however, she would get sick from an infection that's been going around the facility. Despite being in this state, she still managed to write in a diary of the aftermath of being infected. I don't know how much longer I can go on. I do not want to live anymore, as what I become. The red eye beyond the gate showed me. No, touched me, poisoned me. It feels like my mind has been contaminated, defiled by another person's memory. I am no longer fully myself anymore, but I'll fully become someone else either. I'm stuck here, between her and me, with half-formed dreams and recollections, penetrating my brain and tainting my every action. Who is she? Who is that white-haired girl? Why do I long to see her again? Why would she curse me like this? She started talking about some red gates she saw, and while it's unsure what exactly it is, we're sure that it did change her. Something happened to her when she went into the gate. Not only did she feel like she got poisoned, but also weirdly got someone else's memory. And lastly, there's a mention of a white-haired girl again, and how she apparently cursed Falke. Adler noticed her arrival from the gate as well, but it wasn't because of the infection he noted, it was because she had changed herself. The commander never talked about what she saw out there. I'm sure whatever it was made her fall sick. Something about her changed when it returned. She was no longer our beloved leader Falke. Whatever it was, it must have been pretty big to change her that much. The Falke unit is supposed to be the boss around the facility, and without her, people started losing hope and infections started taking over. Upon visiting Adler's office, we can find his personal diary. Adler wrote several events that happened in the facility. The diary starts pretty normal, talking about some furniture he was interested in and some of the workers. But then he starts having these weird dreams. Dreams about some white-haired girl who was playing some cards with some astronomical symbols on them. I had a dream tonight, another memory of the Gestalt life I believe. I was wearing my uniform. There was a young woman, her hair white as snow, and I was conducting some sort of test. I had a deck of cards with astronomical symbols on them, and asked her to guess the plant on the card which I was holding. In the diary as well, he talks about the infection. At first not being sure if there's a disease going on or if it's just rumors, but as days go by, more and more workers get sick, he realizes the disease is real and one that's becoming a huge problem in this facility. And just like Adler's dreams, Falke saw a white-haired girl as well, but instead of playing cards, she got cursed by her. This could have been the same girl as Adler was dreaming about, and even the same girl that was on the train. We also find a note from a Colibri unit who has noticed Adler has been acting strange and kinda untrustworthy. The Colibri unit specializes in bioresonance, a substance that make the user be able to read and even control minds. They're also, funny enough, the shortest units in the facility, with most of the units being like, 2 meters tall and stuff. They are only like 150. As she reads Adler's mind, she finds out he had been deploying an else unit. It's not in any record or in his diary at all. This else unit is most likely the one we play as, which does explain why he said we should never have returned. Despite knowing all of this, there's still questions to be asked, like why did Adler push down Elsie down the elevator trying to kill her? And lastly, who is this white-haired girl that's been mentioned many times throughout this game? There is this area you can go to that leads to a surviving unit with some purple light and plants. But the most interesting part is the documents on the ground. These are classified documents and can already be seen by the commander. So in the document it explains how these units in the facility are just copies from several original replicants. What they will do is that they will take the best replicant at the time and use their memory skills and mass produce them. By doing this they could get the most effective workers possible. But when faced with new challenges, this will make the units deviant from the original patterns and turn out less efficient. This is why we have found several documents on several of the units in the facility. The commanding facility was meant to use the documents and make sure the workers were as effective as possible and don't stray away from the original patterns. The government don't look at the units as people, but as machines that's supposed to be working at maximum capacity at all times. Walking towards this door, we can also find a flashlight, which is both a blessing and a curse. In one way, you can finally see in complete dark areas, which is great. You know, because now you can finally see. But on the other hand, enemies will now spot you almost instantly when you have the flashlight on. Most of the dark rooms have enemies in them as well, so get ready to either fight or run like a bitch. And lastly, flashlight does have its own inventory space, so it doesn't even use one of the 6 of your inventory. So thank God again. Now this area features some new enemies. We already saw the enemies with the knives, they're the most standard enemies in the game. We also got the crawlers, as I like to call them. They crawl from the floor of certain rooms. They're not hard to kill and they're slow, but it's more the surprise that makes them scary. We also got some taller enemies with a stun pod that has more health and a bit faster than the knife enemies. Then we got the tall enemies with a shield which can block bullets. So for these it's better to sneak up on them and shoot them behind or use a stun baton or flare. Lastly are these weird tumor looking enemies that make a loud noise and activate your radio. To kill them you have to find the source of the sound, which is one of them. Most enemies in game, just you could either ignore them, kill them. These enemies you should always just kill. I think it's a better time now than ever to mention how this game's atmosphere is one of the best I've ever experienced in my life. I always said this before, but atmosphere is the most important part of the game to me. But if you don't got the atmosphere, that's when it's hard for me to get invested in the game. And that's part of why I adore Mario Galaxy games so much, because of its amazing atmosphere. Signalis atmosphere is always so foreboding, so desolate, so empty, yet you know you're never alone. Most of the noises come from environmental sounds like flicking lights, Elster's footsteps or pressing buttons. And the music in this game also adds to the atmosphere a lot. A lot of the soundtrack does remind me a lot of Silent Hill 2 and 1 tracks. When there's enemies on screen, you get this intense chase music that creates this panic feeling of either killing them as fast as possible or running away. A lot of the music in the background has a lot of noises, making you think there's something there when most of the time there's usually not. This soundtrack is so brilliant in creating fear of the unknown. But there are also some calm and relaxing tracks, like the safe room theme. And there's also some use of classical music pieces in the game, like Moonlight Sonata. The use of classic music is interesting though, because it's the only time in the game when the character in game can hear it and not just the people playing the game. So to get a bit technical for a second, there are two terms when referring to music in media. One is diegetic and the other is non-diegetic. Diegetic is music and sound the characters in the universe can hear, like footsteps, elevator shafts, and the music playing from the radio. Non-diegetic sound is sound that the character in the universe can't hear, like the background music only the audience can hear, like when music playing during a chase or boss fight. They don't hear the music, only we can hear the music. Even in the game, we can also find a note of someone being tired of hearing this music play all the time in another room, which is referring to the radio that plays Moonlight Sonata all the time. And getting back to the puzzle, with some taking way too long for me to solve, I'll admit I have a small brain. Like seriously, some of these I really should have solved them much easier, but I'm just stupid. Elster can finally use the mine shaft to get down to the mines and find the missing girl, kicking off chapter 2 of the game. We get a cutscene of Isa being in the mines and Adler hunting her down. Not sure why, but knowing he just tried to kill us earlier, it's probably not for good reasons either. Being stealthy, he stabs Adler in the eye and he falls down his big hole. Whether he survived or not is very unsure. Finally, we are at the mines, the place that we said we were going to find the missing girl we were looking for. This area, however, is empty. I know I said it multiple times, but this feels very empty, but also very big. Ironically enough, this is the shortest part of the game. Down in the mines we can find another weapon. In the safe room there is a flare gun you can find. The flare gun is another great weapon. You can shoot flares at an enemy that instantly takes them down in one hit, even bigger ones. Not only that, but you can later find grenade launcher ammo that the flare can also shoot. This area has a lot of enemies, but this time it's just best to avoid them all. Don't even try to kill any of them. It's not really worth it. Even taking the elevator down for this big door to open, with the previous boss being here too, now as a common enemy. Having to wait for it to open so slowly while the enemies want to kill you was very stressful. This is part where I died another time because I took too long time. Jumping into it, we arrive at the lower area in the mines, which does not have much going on here. Only interesting thing being this huge hole in the ground, the one that Adler fell into while being stabbed. So we know all the choice, else just jumps down. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? We already jumped down so many holes, so why not just do another one? Jumping down, however, triggers a scene where we are at the beach at night. Going outside is a dark and red color looming over the sky with a beach stretching both sides. On both sides there are several notes. Several of the notes have several letters scribbled out, which makes it a bit more unclear. But walking in the right side of the beach, we see a bunch of white rocks. Or I thought it was white rocks until I realized no, all these are just skulls. This could be symbolic for all the people who had died in the facility, but even then, how does it really correlate with us being on the beach? And these notes, what do they mean exactly? Well, before we can get an answer, it ends and we're back with Elster. Being in water with a bunch of dead units. However, these units only have their endoskeleton left. This area feels very different compared to the rest of the facility. It looks much older. It's almost like this one was built way before the facility was in function. But walking around some rooms, we also get to one room where there's a big hole. But this time it's surrounded by a beating flesh.
That is fucking disgusting.
Like I said earlier, this game has you just jumping many holes, but this one, being a fleshy one, now that's definitely new. And I don't know about this one, but this one feels a bit unsure. But with no one else to go, again, Elsa just jumps down. Jumping down we see Isa again, but this time she's getting attacked by a monster with several legs and arms, which does remind me something out of Silent Hill. This boss fight is even harder than the last one. Being in a small area and the boss being much faster, there's no time to really stand still. While you're trying your best to not die here, Isa's trying to pick up a bullet for a gun, but she takes like fucking forever. Like, come on dude, today please. But finally damaging it enough, Isa finally finished off with the last blow, but by doing so, she gets knocked out by the recoil of the weapon. Elsa puts her in a bed nearby, but Isa won't wake up for now. But there is actually a way to wake her up. If you use this little bottle of blue liquid, she will actually give you the gun to use. This weapon is a very strong weapon. It can one-shot most enemies and even hit multiple at once if they're lined up. What's also interesting about this rifle is that it's the same one Adler used when hunting for Isa. Alright, so I think this game is brilliant, right? It's amazing in every way. But I think this area is probably my least favorite area in the game. I mean, visually it looks amazing and distinct, with a mix of rusted metal and red flesh, and how we're getting closer to get to the bottom of this. But just the same as the area before the mines, it has multiple floors. Alright, not a bad thing. It worked in the other area. Why don't it work here? Well, the big reason is because the map does not work at all here. I mean, like, it actually doesn't work. It doesn't display anything at all. Now, it would not been so bad if it was one floor like in the beginning, but it has many rooms and multiple floors to walk around, and trying to find out how to get back to a certain room to solve a puzzle is pretty annoying. I spent so much time down here trying to remember which room certain puzzles and items were in. It's not a bad part of the game. Again, the atmosphere is fantastic and I really love the visual style, but the lack of map makes this area way more confusing to traverse to. So down in this area, everything is so bloody and fleshy. The infection has been spreading fast, even covering so much of the walls and ground. It's only a matter of time before it covers the whole facility and the rest of the people who are still down here. The infection, however, does seem like something that's been down here for a very long time, and that there may be a reason why it started to spread out so much. From several notes we've seen people talk about the white-haired girl, apparently being raised by an actual mother and having a family, unlike the other units in this facility who was raised by school and the army. Now, by doing a puzzle finding some hexagons, we come to a familiar looking hole that has stairs leading up to it. It looks exactly the same as the one in the beginning, only here it's covered in red instead of snow. By walking up, we see Adler up on the staircase, still with his knife in his eye. He starts talking about the event with Falke and how beyond the threshold, what she saw out there changed her forever. And after that incident, he was no longer the beloved leader he had known before. Elster doesn't care what is out there. She is there for one reason, and one reason only, and that is to find a missing friend of hers. Walking out there, it's a complete red desert with black pillars sticking up from the ground. It feels dead. How could there be someone out there? She even walks past several units just like her, dead on the ground. Text appears on the screen of someone having waited for us. Now, I know I could have done this like, oh, it ended, it's done guys, okay, end of the video and just do fake credits, but no, it's not the ending. I mean, I think we all know it's not the ending. So getting back to the menu, it's different this time. Instead of the usual shot of Esther's eye being alive and following the cursor, now it's completely dead. In the menu, you can't go back to save file, but rather just begin like it was a new save file. Opening up a new file brings us to the exact same cutscene as before, only this time it seems different. It's brighter than before. And looking out of the window, we did not crash land like before. Instead, we are in space, which must mean we are playing a period of time before the crash. Elster has a list she has to do before she can go into this one room, checking that everything is okay and even finding some notes. Apparently they've been on 3,000 cycles, which I think is supposed to be days, I think? I'm not quite sure about that. I'm not sure, but it does seem like a long while at least. We can even find a secret file about the Elster unit that she should not be reading, but we still do, because who's gonna stop us? The space police? Yeah, right, buddy. They're not even in this sector, stupid. The Elster unit is an engineer, but also great at combat, which explains how she's able to heal herself and also manage to use weapons so well. The most interesting part though is that in this document it says to not befriend Elster units, do not show them movies or let them listen to music. Doing all the tasks, we can get into the room where the officer, who appears to be someone named Ariana, a strangely white-haired girl similar to the one Adler's been talking about in his notes. It's the 3000 cycle anniversary, so she puts on some music and starts dancing with Elster, kisses her, and then watch the movie, and then they sleep to the movie. We then cut back to Elster lying dead on red sand, with Ariana standing over her, damaged, and asking if she remembered the promise, with Elster immediately waking up. Having crawled all the way back to the ship with just on one hand, by the way, Elster is just fucking badass. She's built differently. She finds another Elster unit lying dead and takes not only her arm but a chest piece as well, because no matter what happens, she has made a promise and she's gonna hold her word for it. Back in the ship, the tumor has been able to spread all the way there, with a big hole in the ship as well that the Elster has to jump into to go back and save Ariana and to keep her promise. Jumping in, we get transported back to the beach, only now there's a boat with a red light attached to it. As before, there were notes on the beach, only now they changed and it's almost like the notes are about some ritual. Something old, far older than humanity, sleeps down below the ground. Those of us who can hear its call at the night. An invitation, an ocean of memories, where I ends with we. From this, we can gather that the infestation is not just some normal infestation, but one that's been down there for an extremely long time. And Falke must have went to the red eye or the portal due to it calling on her. However, the eye ends with we, I am very unsure of, but we will probably find out about that soon. We also find another note where it says kill me a bunch of times. Anyways, by interacting with the boat we can conclude chapter 2, and we're now at the final chapter. Now we're back at the bathroom looking at the mirror like before, but this time the infestation has been able to spread up on the top floor. The infection is everywhere. It's now or never. The safe room luckily remains untouched. Several rooms are covered by this pulsating flesh. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention this earlier, but down in the mines colony there was a new enemy introduced. These tall, weird looking figures with a long head and no arms. These are pretty dangerous despite the lack of arms. They can do really good damage. They use a large head attack, so for them it's best to shoot from afar, but like the other enemies, you can sneak up on them and kill them with a melee weapon like a flare. And yet again, we come to a hole where we have to jump down, which triggers a cutscene with Adler. So with this we can see Adler is looking pretty different, being transformed into one of the effective ones, but weirdly, unlike the others, he still has his conscience. It's more of the outside that changed rather than the inside. We also see a glimpse of Itoi not doing so well, seem like she's about to have a mental breakdown. Something to point out is that every time we see Itoi, she always seems to be more and more damaged, probably because she can't heal herself like Elster can. And finally we are at Rotfront Colony. This is by far the hardest area in the game. A lot of enemies in small areas, making sneaking past them more tough than usual. I was at low health for most of this section. It's here we also get access to the new gun, a 3-shot burst machine gun. It's really good, but ammo is a bit scarce. But for small enemies, it's excellent. Going to the left and into this door, we can find a computer. On this computer, you can find information about several units in the facility, one also being about Itoi. I just talked about how she's seen to be more and more damaged over time, but in this document it confirms that she's had quite a big medical history. Having had major fractures in several of her body parts, she is very prone to accidents and hurting herself. But on the file we can also find information about Ariane. Now at first it doesn't stand out too much, but one thing that I find interesting is that in the doctor's notes it says it's been removed. On the computer as well there is a puzzle to be solved revolving around these satellites, and this one took me way too long to solve. I thought you had to line up the line that went through the electric wires to get the same number as the one was on the right and left. But no, not at all. You just had to put the both signals in the middle, and then you had to play the radio frequencies that showed the number. I thought it was just much more complicated, but it really wasn't so. Now doing some more puzzles later on, we found Itoi again in a room that's been locked behind a code that you could find in her file. Not being able to find a friend must have made her lose her hope and her will to live. Just like Elsa, Isa also made a promise to find and save her sister, but as we saw, she never found her, and thus she dies and becomes a part of the infestation. Walking to the right, we also find a closet with 2 pictures on top, one being of Isa and the other one being of her sister Erica. In the desk below the pictures we also find a card with the caption death, which is very fitting for this situation. This card is for a puzzle where we need to collect 6 cards to open a door. Finding the cards and doing this puzzle, we go into a tunnel that leads back to the room with the red book and the computer we were in way early in the video. In the corner room we see also a box that's been very chained up. Elster can't open it without the key, but I just wonder what could possibly be in there since it's been so heavily locked up. The last seal has been broken. It's time to go home. Going out of the room we get to another safe room, but this will be the last one in the entire game. You can't even go back to the door you came before. There are supplies of ammo and health in there, so it's best to pick up and prepare for yourself for the final battle. But before we do that, we find a note in the kitchen. It's a note to Ariane from her aunt. She talks about her uncle having bought her books from her school and to pick it back up at the Itoi store. We also find some documents on the table talking about Ariane's graduation for having worked in the mining facility. On the ground by the table is also a letter from Ariane's mom, talking about how she is glad Ariane is doing well after her hospital visit. She also mentioned that Ariane looks very similar to someone named Alina Seo. And looking at them side by side, they definitely look a lot like each other. Her mother does wonder if they actually are related or not, but she doesn't know anyone in the family named Seo, so probably not, it's probably just a coincidence. But enough of that, it's time to prepare yourself. Bring the best weapons you got and finish the promise. This is the end. Leave forever. Outside of this room is a long and dark corridor. There are no monsters here, just Elster walking. But on the ground there's also several notes from Adler. All efforts to contain the illness have been in vain. All the Gestalt workers have succumbed to it, leaving only dark shadows on the wall and floors where they died. And soon, all of us replica will have lost our senses and turned to writing masses of flesh. I now believe it was not an infectious disease, nor some form of poison radiation. It was a slow corruption of reality itself, as I relived the same cycle over and over. Each time details changed, things are twisted, added, removed. How long until it all turns to nothing but noise? Walking more, you find another note, but this one has a drawing. A strange drawing of an eye-like creature. Most likely the same red eye he was being talking about in his older notes before. A crashed ship, a strange gate, a hole in the ground. An island beyond reach. Memories from other lives. Dreams of suffering and loneliness. A promise, a search for someone lost. I saw her in the red emptiness, waiting for me. We made a promise as the memories of a stranger rushed into my mind. I felt the borders of myself blur. Now I can no longer tell where Falke ends and Elster begins. It seems like Falke and Elster are somewhat correlated to all of this, but you'll get your answers soon. Just wait a bit more in the video, okay? Can you please? You already come this far. I'll explain a bit later. Walking more, we find another note. However, this one is directed towards Elster from Adler. You must turn back. There is nothing for you there. You tried so many times and you failed every time. Don't you see that you're ruining everything? This is your final warning, Adler. On the table, we find a final note from Falke, which sounds strangely familiar to something we've seen before. We were dancing to that song they started broadcast with. We fell asleep watching that movie we had seen so many times before. If only I could take us back to a time where we were happy. These memories are mine now. And finally walking into the room, we see the body of Falke from before, but now she speaks. Final fight is on. She is floating in the air having multiple attacks, such as sending spears from the sky or shooting balls. She also, after each time you attack her, gets more shields, so shooting her becomes harder and harder. The only way to properly damage her is to use one of the spears and stabs her with it. But to do that you have to shoot her first so she lands on the ground. Later on she also spawns more and more enemies to make it more difficult. And the music is as intense as ever. I can really feel the inspiration from Silent Hill 1 here. As the fight goes on, she becomes more and more aggressive, but thankfully they do spawn ammo and health. If only some other game could have done the same thing. By finally defeating her, we get a glimpse of Elster and Ariana hugging each other, with Falke's last words being, "Now we are finally complete." We go back to the port like before, with Adler waiting for us yet again. Elster, as she walks yet again through the desolate red desert, finds the ship. This time one of the handles opens so she can get into the ship. The ship looks remarkably similar to the ship you crashed in with. Even finding notes that were identical here to the other ship. When I signed up for this mission, I just wanted to get away from everything. I was sick of Rothron, of school, of the photo store, sick of the fake smiles and the whispering behind people's backs. When I saw the photo of that soldier, I wondered who she was. Was she happy? Was her family proud of her? Did her comrades love her? Since we looked alike, could I have been like her? But in the end, I just want to leave. Nothing I'd done or made ever meant anything to anyone, so why bother? Here, I'm finally free. I get to be by myself and do what I want. I can finally be happy. Walking to the left, we also find the kitchen with even more notes from her. Cycle 648. Talk some more to the else unit. She's different from the replicants I knew back home. Nothing like my teacher or the blockboard protector. I know she didn't have a choice, but it feels like she also is here because she didn't fit in. It's like we have a runaway from the world together. At first I didn't like having someone around, and I was glad she's quiet and didn't approach me. But lately I miss someone I can talk to. It's been so long since I last saw another person. I never thought I would miss it, except her. Everything is the same here. Always, nothing ever changes. Walking to the door in front of us, we come to a room filled with water, and on the small table is another note from Ariane. Cycle 1294. Had a strange dream. I was listening to the radio with my mother. Life back then, the numbers were on, and mother was taking notes with a book on her lap. It was that book I saw in the shop window of the bookstore where the twins lived. The one with a yellow hooded figure on the cover. When I went there to buy it, it was gone. And Erica said the protectors had confiscated it. Or was it Isa? I can't remember. Cycle 1840. Everything is always the same. I feel like I'm trapped inside a ship. I know every bolt and every panel in every room of it. I've seen everything. I've done everything there is to do here. I can't concentrate on anything. It's like there's this fog inside my head. And whenever I try to do anything, I just can't focus. I want to go outside. I want to breathe fresh air. I want to feel the wind of my face and in my hair. Cycle 2503. I think I lost more hair. I'm sitting here, getting older every time I wake up. I feel older, weaker, sicker. I get out of breath so easily. And my back hurts too when I sit down. How much longer will this go on? It feels like I'm slowly dying. And walking out of the room, you find a final note from her. Cycle 599. I'm tired of it all. Every time I go to sleep, I wonder if I will wake up again. I'm scared I will be the last time I say goodnight to her. Did I say it right? Will she be okay? What if one of us won't wake up tomorrow? Cycle 54. I don't want to die. I don't want to live anymore either. Everything is just so exhausting. I just want to lie down and disappear. Cycle. I just want to sleep. Please just let me sleep. Please just make it stop. Please. Walking to the right, we get to a dark room with one notable thing about it, being another Elsa unit on the floor. But it's not just some other Elsa unit, that's actually Elster's old body, the one we are playing as. Interacting with it, and she says, I could not keep my promise. Despite my best efforts, I eventually fell ill too. It had to end this way. But now there's only one thing left to do, and that is to go through the main door and finally see Ariane again, or as the game likes to say, return home. Walking in, we see a white-haired woman in the cryo chamber, who is Ariane. And now finally, Elster can finish her promise. and as she is about to walk away, her body starts to malfunction. As Elsa lies on the ground, she too dies, dying together with the one she loved the most in the world. Now, at first it may seem a bit unclear what exactly is going on, but the game gives you all the answers you need, and hopefully I will manage to explain them well enough to you. When Falke was going through the red portal, she changed forever. What had happened to her is that she had gotten the memories of Elster, which changed her personality a lot. The line from the note, "Now I can no longer tell where Falke ends and Elster begins," is referring to how Falke has gotten Elster's memories. She has been fighting for the cause of someone she's never really met before or has any real relationship to. Ito went to the same school as Ariana. After being pushed down the elevator, Elsa gets to see the memory of Ito seeing Ariana being bullied in school by others. Ito was one of Ariana's more close friends. In one of her earlier notes, we see the sentence, "I never thought I would miss it, except her," which is referring to Ito as she's the only person in the facility that treated her nicely. During the 3000 cycle, also known as the third phase, Ariana had yet to find a planetary objects during her time in the ship. The nation had studied that the vessels were in decay with eternal systems like a nuclear reactor on the ship failing, which would lead to everyone on the ship to die. In a document to Elster, it is said that her type of unit takes radiation very poorly, worse than a normal human, but Ariana would not tell Elster about this, as she wanted the last few days to be romantic and great. But as more cycles went on, Ariana started to slowly die due to the radiation, which would make her hair start to fall out with extreme insomnia. At some point, the damaged Elster put Ariana in the cryopod to save her life so she wouldn't die. When they were gonna land, Elster was supposed to waken Ariana again, but due to radiation exposure, she would die, leaving Ariana still in the pod suffering from radiation. The Elster body that died from radiation is actually one that was to the left of the ship, the one where she states she couldn't keep her promise. The promise was to let Ariana out of the cryopod. Now, when it comes to this whole game, this was not Elster's first journey. She's actually been doing this many times before. Aldo explains in one of his earlier notes how he has relived the same cycle over and over again, with each one changing something to make them different. Earlier we saw the elevator shaft with so many Elster units and the same desert, but the thing is, all those weren't different units, they were all the same unit. They were all of her old bodies. Elster had died many times before finally reaching Ariana. They had been stuck in this never-ending time loop where Adler killed Esther, until this one time she managed to get through. He wanted to kill Elster so this time loop, this curse, could end. If Elster was able to reach Ariana, then reality itself would collapse. Adler tried his best to find a way to save everyone, including his beloved Falke, but to no avail, as in the end, Elster reached Ariana and reality, as they know it, would end. And the ship Elster climbs in on the Red Desert, that was the original ship both Elster and Ariana were in space. The one in the winter, that's another ship that crashed. Ariana was full of something called a bioresonance. Her bioresonance was so powerful, she managed to warp time and space. It's why they can fly for over 5000 cycles and more, because it never was that long due to her powers, it only felt that way. And by killing Ariana, time is restored back to normal, which is why Elsa dies right away, as she should have done long ago, due to the age of the unit. There are 3 different endings, with all of them having a very sad outcome. The first one I showed is the promise ending, where you kill Ariana and then Elsa dies afterwards. The second one, however, has Elsa going to Ariana, but this time Ariana doesn't know who Elsa is. And I honestly think this ending might actually be even sadder. You kill her in the first ending for sure, but you know, this is what Ariana wanted. Her suffering at least ended and Elsa could rest finally too with her, but here, Ariana doesn't even remember her. In this ending, Elsa sits beside the pod with Ariana and tells her she just wants to sit down for a bit with her. All those memories of Elsa are just gone for her, and instead she just looks at her like a random person. The third ending is called the leave ending, where Elsa doesn't even go into the ship and instead just leaves her behind due to the stress and how much it became for her, asking her to forgive her. As she walks into the blue sky, she falls down and dies. However, unlike the first ending where she dies because the time loop has ended, here she dies willingly, knowing there's nothing left for her. None of the endings have a good outcome. I mean, the promised ending is the closest, but even then, you destroy reality, so it's not a really good ending for anyone else. Every character in this game did not deserve the fate they were getting. You could look at Adler as a villain, but I would disagree. An antagonist, sure, but not a villain. Adler just want to save everyone and make everyone go back together like it was. And Falcon, with your memories, just want to save Ariana as well. Now, with all this being said and done, there's still one more thing to get into. And that is the secret ending. The 3 other endings will depend on how much you died and how many characters you talk to and so on. However, the secret ending is different. So to get to the secret ending, you need to collect 3 hidden keys throughout this game. I actually managed to get one of the keys during my first playthrough, but I had no idea what it was for. So with this, it means I had to go to play through the game again, but this time I decided to play on the survival difficulty. Medium feels like the most perfect difficulty for the game for me. You had a good amount of health and enemies were not too tough to kill or to avoid, but it wasn't all easy either. At first I thought survival difficulty was not going to be so much harder, but wow, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong.
I'm joking. Stop! The brake! Stop!
The enemies do so much more damage. Before on medium, you can survive like several hits from them, but here, no, most of the time you can barely survive one. On survival, you have to be much more careful as you can barely afford taking hits. Not only that, but a lot of times enemies will camp outside the room we went into, we get immediately hit. It can be so frustrating and so annoying at times, but at the same time it did feel satisfying to beat the game on the hardest difficulty. I'll give it that. Anyways, the keys are located in 3 areas. The first one is in the hospital ward. Go into this one room with red lights and cages all over it, play the radio frequency on 95 and click on this body multiple times and the key will appear. The key of love. The next key is on floor 8 in a big dark room. Play on 65 near the bookshelf will make the second key appear. The key of eternity. And the last key is in the back room in the last area. By tuning in on 240 will make the last key appear with the books. The key of sacrifice. Each of these keys also has a little unique description. Cycle 888. I try to teach Elsa how to dance. It's so cute how clumsy she can be when it comes to these things. On the horizon, I saw a star fall into the sea and the sound of thunder, like trumpets of angels, flew over the water. Are you still looking for answers where there are only questions? With the keys we can finally open the locks and see what's inside. But before that there's a numbers pad, which means that it also needs a code. The code is the numbers that were displayed when Elsa first entered the facility and turned on the PC. And click on the code, we can finally open the safe. And inside the safe are a flower pot with white lilies. I said earlier how all the endings had bad outcomes, but this one has a good one. It has a good outcome, not only for Elster, but Ariana as well and for everyone else. In this ending, Elster ends the ritual and makes the infestation stop, and not only makes sure she survives, but saves Ariana as well. In my opinion, this is my favorite ending in the game. The Promise ending was the most emotional, having to kill the one you loved in your life, but I like this one more because here Elster keeps her promise. The promise was never to kill Ariana, it was to let her out of the pod. It was just that in the Promise ending, Ariana knew that by still being alive, the ritual would not end, and the only way to end it was to die. But with the ritual having ended, Ariana can live on, and so can Elster. Personally, I believe that during the ritual, the infestation completely ended. While not going back to 100% normalcy, several characters like Falcon and Adler managed to return back to form and several of the units of the facility. The keys you collected were about Elster and Ariana. Key of love for the love for each other, key of sacrifice being Elster having sacrificed to save Ariana, having sacrificed several for all their bodies just to save her, and the key of eternity where the love will last forever. This game is one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. Rose Engine did a phenomenal job with this game and created something that's gonna be stuck in my mind forever. I'm not sure what the future holds for Rose Engine, but whatever it is, I'm all for it. So with this long video finally been done, I thank you all for watching this video and I really hope you got something out of this, and I will see you next time.